Hundreds of pro-Israeli protesters also rallied outside the United Nations.
Blue and white flags were met with red, black and green ones.
Protests against the bombing of Gaza are getting louder.
Across the Arab and Islamic world.
We've also heard from the UN Secretary General.
I'm fully aware of the deep grievances of the Palestinian people after 56 years of occupation. But as serious as these grievances are, they cannot justify the acts of terror against civilians committed by Hamas on October 7. But those attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
The conflagration that began with the Hamas attack on Israel almost 2 weeks ago has now spread into attacks into Gaza, with horrendous implications for civilians on the ground. But it helped spark protests across the Middle East. At home, our politicians started the week mourning the Hamas attack.
Mr. Speaker, the evil committed by Hamas in Israel has chilled every Australian heart.
This attack on the 7th of October was just a total act of sheer barbarity.
Today we mourn the greatest loss of Jewish life in a single day since the Holocaust.
We join with everyone in this parliament in mourning the 1,300 Israelis who have lost their life. But on today's count, there are also between 2,300 and 2,600 Palestinians who have lost their life, many of whom are children, and we mourn them as well.
But just as the focus has shifted globally through the week to the cost of Israel's response in terms of human lives and misery in Gaza, so it dramatically shifted here this morning.
3,000 Palestinian deaths, approximately, 1,000 of which are children. I feel very strongly that Palestinians are being collectively punished here for Hamas's barbarism. I really do feel that there is an obligation on governments, particularly the Israeli government, to, as we have said, follow the rules of international law and to observe, in particular, that innocents should be protected.
Collective punishment is not just a description here. It is a term which is defined as a war crime under the Geneva Convention. Ed Husic, the Industry Minister, a member of the Cabinet and the first Muslim to be elected to the Federal Parliament, chose his words carefully when he spoke on the radio this morning, but they reflected the fact that the way this ugly conflict is seen in the Australia of 2023 is changing. Israelis
paid a terrible price for the barbarism of Hamas. And the other thing that has to happen as well is the absolute unconditional release of Israeli hostages. Israelis have paid a high price, but I'm also worried about the price Palestinians are paying and are going to pay.
Husic's remarks were followed by some from colleague Anne Ali.
Do you believe that Israel has committed war crimes?
Well, I think that is something that is possibly something that could be investigated. And I think that anyone, any state or any group that commits war crimes should be investigated and should be held accountable.
I think what's going on in the Labor Party at the moment is that there's deep division and there's a lot of anti-Israel sentiment within the Labor caucus, and that's an open secret. There are lots of people who are so quick to condemn Israel for their actions that that's just their instinct.
We are all making the same point about the need for innocent civilian lives to be respected and protected, consistent with humanitarian law. I'm not going to get into parsing the language used by colleagues. We all choose our own ways to describe our reactions to what's happening over there in the Middle East.
What is happening in the Middle East should be about something much bigger than just alleged divisions in the Cabinet. The politics of the Middle East in Australia have historically been influenced by ties with Israel.
Australia has the largest per capita Holocaust survivor population outside Israel.
Australia now also has a large number of Arab and Muslim Australians. It means our leaders have to speak for and recognise a much more diverse community.
We should be very clear that it is Hamas that is the enemy, not the Palestinian people.
This is now moving beyond self-defence into an invasion. And it is up to Australia as a peace-loving country to join the push to stop it.
Not all our political leaders have been nuanced in their responses.
The Coalition supports and proudly supports Israel's right to do what is necessary and needed in the circumstances, with every asset available to safeguard its sovereignty, to bolster its borders, to protect its people, and to thwart the threats it now faces, the existential threats. There must be no restraint shown to those who have showed no restraint themselves in committing these vicious and vile acts of terrorism.
A rare intervention from the United States by ASIO head Mike Burgess seemed to de-escalate the political rhetoric this afternoon.
I put out that warning to all Australians. Be very careful about the language you use whilst you're expressing your views, because that language can inflame tensions, and that's not helpful in our society.
The Jewish community, but also in the Islamic community and the Palestinian community as well, are feeling under siege at the moment. And it's important we reach out to them. And that is what my government is doing.